The Honourable Member for Rimouski, Nejet, Témiscouata, Basque. Mr. Speaker, the government is going to spend $4.5 billion taxpayers' money, and they will take on all the risk. And this is a government that had committed to eliminating oil and gas subsidies. Why are the governments investing so much in oil and gas and so little in alternative energy? The Honourable Minister of Finance.
To be very clear, we've found a fair price for the assets of TransMountain. What we've done is ensure at the same time that there is no subsidy in this deal. What we're doing is trying to ensure that we can move forward in an economically prudent way to protect jobs, to create economic advantage for our country. We know this is in our best interests. We're going to continue to work to ensure that our natural resources can be brought to international markets.
Would remind the member for Beauport, Limoilou, Côte-de-Beaupré, Charlevoix, that they are not to speak out when someone has the floor, and they are not to cry out during these proceedings. The Honourable Member for Rimouski, Nejet, Témiscouata, Basque. Mr. Speaker, what's clear is that we're the ones who talk about energy and the environment. They're the ones who don't. They're going to be investing $4.8 billion in a pipeline. There were only $3 billion in clean energy, Mr. Speaker. We have a serious problem with climate change, and if they took this seriously, they wouldn't invest in a pipeline. They would be investing in clean energy. Why are the Liberals so interested in investing in fossil fuels? Mr. Speaker, we continue with our approach to invest in our future. We know that the environment and the economy go hand in hand. That is very important. We have made investments in clean energy, but at the same time, we know that it is necessary to invest in this project to ensure that we will be able to protect the benefits to our economy for the future.
For Skeena Bulkley Valley.
Hey, anyone want to buy a 65-year-old leaky pipeline? No? Well, wait. It's located next to schools and parks and literally crosses hundreds of rivers. Well, the Liberals do. And they somehow decided that paying $4.5 billion to buy an old pipeline and not tell us how much it's going to cost to build some illusionary new pipeline is somehow a good, quote, investment. When did Liberals actually decide that trampling over the rights of Indigenous peoples and putting our coast further at risk was somehow in the public interest?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we approved this pipeline federally back in November 2016 after robust environmental assessment. The BC government approved this pipeline. We know that in this country, to get investments made, we need to have the rule of law. We cannot have a situation where provinces delay, create uncertainty, and make it such that investors don't actually want to invest in our country. We're moving forward to ensure this project moves forward. We know that eventually it can move to the private sector, which is what we will aspire to do following this decision today.
The member for Skeena Bulkley Valley.
$3.2 billion to provide safe drinking water for every kid living on reserve in this country. $4.5 billion to buy a 65-year-old pipeline. You have to ask yourself, what kind of priorities do these Liberals actually have? When a Texas oil company shows up and needs a bailout, these Liberals can't find a shovel big enough to pitch in. It won't stop First Nations in court, and it won't stop people in the street. So when exactly did Liberals decide to trump First Nations rights in title and protecting our coast, all in favor of some Texas oil company they want to help out?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I can only repeat that we think that it's critically important that we ensure that a project that's been federally and provincially approved can move forward. We've decided to purchase these assets because we know this is the way to ensure that this project actually happens and that we deal with the squabbles between provinces. We will move forward, reducing the risk in this project so that we can ensure that the economic advantages that we're seeking are achieved for Canadians.
Honourable Minister for Rimouski, Nejet, Témiscouata, Basque. Mr. Speaker, in 2017, Kinder Morgan Canada declared $64.2 million in net revenue. And so they should have paid $64 million in taxes, but that's not what happened. What happened is that that company, using all possible tax loopholes, didn't pay a single cent. Zero. They paid nothing. Knowing that, can the Prime Minister explain why it would be in the national interest to give a blank check for how much? 5 billion, 1 billion to a company like Kinder Morgan that finds a way and has an interest in not paying its fair share of taxes? The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, what the NDP does not understand is that it's not a question of choosing between the environment and the economy. We have to create jobs while we protect the environment. Every year we lose $15 billion because we don't have another market for our oil resources, and that costs money for everyone. We have researched and approved this Trans Mountain project under an improved and strengthened process, and it is in the national interest to go ahead with it, and that's why the pipeline will be built. The Honourable Member for Rimouski-Témiscouata-Les Basques. Mr. Speaker, does it make sense that a company that makes so much profit pays no taxes? It goes even further than that. For 3 years now, that company has earned more than $340 million. Do you know how many taxes were paid? 1.1 million in 3 years. So I'll repeat my question. Why would it be in the national interest to give a blank check of how much? 500 million, a billion, 5 billion to a company like Kinder Morgan that finds a way and has an interest in not paying its taxes? The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we can see that the NDP is doing whatever it can to block this pipeline that will create jobs in Canada and that will allow us to export our resources to new markets, to improve the price that we are currently getting, and to show leadership on climate change by bringing about carbon pricing and pollution pricing throughout the country, as well as defending our coastlines with an internationally known Oceans Protection Plan. We have proven that the economy and the environment go together. The Honourable Member for Masquinongé.
Paying its fair share of taxes. The result? Kinder Morgan Canada has only paid 0.004% of what they should have paid over the last 3 years. Wow. Mr. Speaker, that's over $180 million of tax avoidance. And now the Liberal government wants to use Canadians' money to subsidize Kinder Morgan Canada against any future losses. Mr. Speaker, why is the Prime Minister willing to use taxpayer funds to help an oil company that refuses to pay its taxes here in Canada?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, every year Canadians lose about $15 billion because we don't have access to a new market for our oil resources. Getting this pipeline built will fix that and will lead to better jobs, and will also allow us to continue to achieve our carbon reduction targets by bringing in a national price on pollution. These are things that Canadians understand go together. We grow the economy, we protect the environment, we do them both together, and that's what makes a difference for Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé.
Take all these risks on and then give this company all the profit. That's not fair and that's not balanced, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister promised to eliminate fossil fuel subsidies. What has he done? Nothing. Instead of offering a big fat blank check to a company that refuses to pay taxes here in Canada. If you're a regular Canadian, Mr. Speaker, and you don't pay your taxes, you don't get a bailout from the federal government. So why are they giving one to Kinder Morgan Canada?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, just to correct the record, we have committed and are on track to phase out inefficient fossil fuel subsidies by the year 2025. To do this, we announced in our first budget the expiration of the tax write-offs on capital investments in LNG facilities. In Budget 2017, we announced the elimination of certain tax credits for exploration expenses in the oil and gas sector. We're developing our resources while protecting our environment, including safeguarding our oceans and combating climate change. Our government understands that a clean environment and a strong economy must go hand in hand.
The Honourable Member for Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Well, I guess that imitation is the best form of flattery as they're being sued by First Nations. When it comes to paying for oil spills, many Canadians want to know who picks up the cost to the environment and the economy. The City of Vancouver has been waiting 3 years for the federal government to show up and force the company to pay for the damage done there. So rather than blowing billions of taxpayer dollars subsidizing more pipelines and more risks, will the Liberals finally show up, force the company to pay, or is this actually the Liberal oil strategy to simply privatize the profits while socializing the risk?
Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, our government believes in world-leading marine safety, and that is why we put in place the Oceans Protection Plan. As part of that, we believe that we should use a polluter pay principle, and that is why we are using the Ship Source Oil Fund as the mechanism by which compensation is provided for oil cleanup. This is an important fund that is industry funded so that we make sure that middle-class Canadians don't pay for this.
Honorable député de Rosemont-la-Petite.
Honourable member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. Mr. Speaker, mobilization and resentment over the Kinder Morgan project are increasing. Even 5,000 kilometers away from British Columbia, people are angry. Yesterday in Montreal, thousands of individuals came out into the streets and answered the call of environmental groups, artists, and Indigenous groups. They do not want their money, billions of dollars, to be given to an oil company. Since when is it this government's policy to give a blank check that will use our money to be given to a foreign company? The Honourable Member for Natural Resources.
Member knows these major energy projects are controversial. They're controversial among provinces. They're even controversial within political parties. There might even be members within the New Democratic Party, maybe even from Alberta, who think it's good for Canada. I don't know. We also know that there are 43 Indigenous communities, 33 of them in the province of British Columbia, who think it's a good idea because they believe that the future of our energy resources should be a shared prosperity and Indigenous peoples should be part of it.